Here from Warren, what is next for the crypto proxy? Let's bring in Joseph Vafi. He's the managing director of equity research at Canaccord Genuity. Joseph, great to have you with us.
Thanks.
You are an equity analyst. How do you value this company when actually you really have to have a directional call in Bitcoin to put a price target on MicroStrategy?
Yeah, good afternoon. You know, I think you have to have a positive medium to long-term view in Bitcoin to be positive on MicroStrategy. You know, kind of going back to Michael Saylor's analogy of Manhattan real estate, you know, there's not much more of it that's ever going to be created. And so there is a scarcity value proposition there. You know, in the case of MicroStrategy, you know, they're just going to continue on this path of buying more Bitcoin. And, you know, importantly, what you see in this strategy is MicroStrategy's ability to create accretion in Bitcoin held per share. It doesn't necessarily show up in their financial statements, in their earnings numbers or the like. But every day, if you are an owner of a share of MicroStrategy, that share represents an increasing amount of Bitcoin on a per Bitcoin basis. And so that's what I think investors are really looking at, and that's why they've rewarded the company so much in the last couple of years here.
I'm just curious, Joseph, is there any other example of a company in history that has used their balance sheet in order to buy other assets? I mean, basically, it's almost like a shell company because it's basically exercising the tools that a corporation can use to raise money in order to buy Bitcoin and make more money off of that. The yield is much higher on that. And so is there any equivalent, and is there any at all regulatory risk that somebody steps in and says, this is not kosher?
You know, I mean, it is a consideration, I suppose. You have this is an operating company at its heart. It's a software company. It's got an operating company set of financials. It's not an investment company. They are acquiring an asset. They're acquiring Bitcoin, just like maybe an exploration company, a drilling company, or an E&P company would acquire.
They sell it. They produce or they drill for oil or gas to sell it, and this is expressly to hold it and or to trade it.
Well, they're not trading Bitcoin. They have really only ever bought it. Mm-hmm. They've actually, I don't believe they've actually ever sold a Bitcoin. But they just continue to accrue Bitcoin as a scarce asset, and that's been the strategy to date.
So Joseph, what do you think of the asset then? I mean, at the end of the day, we all know what this is a call on. And I'm not questioning your ability to make a call on Bitcoin. I'm just kind of curious what your call on Bitcoin is, because ultimately that's really what this comes down to. And I would think this does feel different than a miner going out there and securing physical assets in the industry that they're involved in. But talk on Bitcoin, or who's the next Bitcoin, or where do you go with this trade, or are you just buying Bitcoin forever?
Well, you may be just buying Bitcoin forever. Taking a word out of Michael Saylor's pitch book, Bitcoin is the exit strategy. If you look at Bitcoin over the last few years, it's come a long way. It's seeing broader institutional adoption. Under a second Trump administration, we're expecting a much kinder regulatory backdrop. We've been dealing with a very menacing regulatory backdrop here over the last couple of years. If we get a broad regulatory framework in place, digital assets just continue to make their way more into the mainstream. There will be more buyers of it. You could see other players do or mimic a MicroStrategy type of strategy, or you could just see large tech companies, the Magnificent Seven, just allocating 1 or 2% of their balance sheet to Bitcoin. So it does feel like, nothing's perfect and not every asset class is for everybody, but the backdrop around the fundamentals of Bitcoin have really only been improving here over the last year and a half.